Good morning, everybody. It's Pastor John with another edition of Monday Morning Quarterback. Yesterday, we talked about the time when Jesus was 12 years old and his family had gone to Jerusalem. And when his traveling party left to return home to Nazareth, Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem and was lost, separated from his parents for 3 days. And when his parents finally find him, Jesus' response is rather cool. He says, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" And that's, like I said, that seems like a rather cool response to his mom and dad. However, when you consider this passage is about Jesus coming into his identity, I guess it makes some sense. But in the midst of all this commotion and everybody's running around doing their things and stuff, Luke writes something very interesting about Mary. As usual, Mary provides a very understated but very positive example of how to live faithfully. Luke writes, "His mother treasured all these things in her heart." Now, when life seems out of control, and I can't think of, as a parent, I can't think of feeling less in control than if my child is lost. But when life seems out of control, oftentimes we have two responses. To a certain degree, we have one of two responses. The first response is to try to assert a control that we don't have, which only makes us more frustrated, which makes us try to assert more control, which makes us more frustrated, and it becomes a vicious cycle. And the second response is resignation, surrender. I just give up. And neither of these responses really are positive responses. And both responses represent an attempt to actually exert control over the situation. You may not think that resignation is a form of control, but it really is, because when we resign ourselves to something, we just give up. What we're essentially saying is, "Oh, this is too hard. I'm just going to go along to get along, and that way I don't deal with whatever craziness is going on." So it is a form of control. But maybe we can learn from Mary, because Mary did something unique when things were out of control in her life. She treasured these things in her heart. Maybe we can learn to treasure these things in our heart. Keeping in mind that treasuring these things in our heart is not like, "Oh, I must remember this occasion, this happy memory," or whatever. That's not what the Bible means when it says that. It means that we fully experience these things, fully take in what we are experiencing, and offer that experience to God. We seek God in the midst of this experience. That's what that phrase means. It's a form of discernment. And that discernment is at the heart of the serenity prayer, the prayer that I shared during the sermon. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. However, the discernment is important because treasuring these things in our heart is important. I remember one time during the pandemic, there was a lot of protests and things going on a lot of different issues. And I remember seeing a civil rights protester carrying a sign. Some of you might have seen this online. She was carrying a sign that said, I am sick of accepting the things I cannot change." And that was an important awareness, because the serenity prayer is not about accepting passivity in life. It is about discernment. We should never, ever accept circumstances that are unjust, that are anti-Christ, that are anti the kingdom of God, that are not about peace or justice. However, in the midst of our fighting against these things, fighting for grace, peace, justice, we must learn to discern where God is at work and what God calls us to do in the midst of a situation, especially a situation that is beyond our control. We can and should protest, make our voices heard, act in ways that facilitate peace and justice. But we can also act in ways that are consistent with our Christian values of peace and justice, whether or not others are doing so, whether or not our actions are even legal or not. For example, the civil rights movement practiced civil disobedience. You see, we don't have to be in control of a situation in order to work to improve the situation. And that's really the point I'm trying to make here. It's not about control. Our calling in life is not to control everything. It is to be faithful in everything. And sometimes faithfulness means being more discerning, more treasuring all these things in our heart. And then our action can become more faithful. And it won't be a reaction that tries to assert control we don't have. And it certainly won't be surrender. It will be faithfulness. And that's really the point. I hope that you have a wonderful week, my friends. God bless.